Hi there, boys and girls, and welcome back to Conquering Math, where it all adds up. Today we will learn how to multiply fractions. Let's dive on in. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to multiply fractions and mixed numbers. The Common Core State Standard today is 6 NSA1. First, let's take a look at the steps that we need to follow in order to multiply fractions. We will take a look at the equation 2/3 times 6/7 to use as an example. The first step is to multiply the numerators. So if we have 2/3 times 6/7, 2 times 6 is 12, so that is our new numerator. The next step is to multiply the denominators. 3 times 7 is 21, so our denominator is 21. Finally, we need to simplify. Both 12 and 21 are divisible by 3. If we divide the numerator by 3 and the denominator by 3, we find that the answer is 4/7. For example number 1, we will need to evaluate 1/5 times 3/4. The first step is to multiply the numerators, the second step is to multiply the denominators, and finally we will reduce if necessary. If we have 1/5 times 3/4 and we multiply the numerators, we find that 1 times 3 is 3, and if we multiply the denominators, we find that 5 times 4 is 20. So our new fraction is 3/20. 3 and 20 don't have any common factors other than 1, so we can't simplify. For example number 2, we will need to evaluate 1 7/8 times 2/9. This time, we will need to change any mixed numbers that we have into improper fractions. Then we can multiply straight across the numerators, then straight across the denominators. Finally, we will reduce if necessary. We'll start by rewriting the problem. 1 7/8 times 2/9. 1 7/8 becomes the improper fraction 15/8. So we have 15/8 times 2/9. 15 times 2 is 30, so our numerator will be 30, and 8 times 9 is 72, so our denominator is 72. This time we can reduce. Both 30 and 72 share 6 as a factor, so 30 divided by 6 will give us 5, and 72 divided by 6 will give us 12, for an answer of 5/12. Now let's talk about an important strategy called cross-reducing. Cross-reducing allows us to simplify as we work through the problem. For example, if we look at 5/6 times 7/10. The first step is to identify a common factor between one numerator and one denominator and divide it out of each number. For example, 5 is a common factor of both 5 and 10. 5 is in the numerator of 5/6, and 10 is in the denominator of 7/10. We can divide 5 out of each of these, so 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. Next, we multiply as usual. So now we have 1/6 times 7/2 equals 7/12. For example number 3, we will need to evaluate 4/15 times 5/16. We'll first cross-reduce using the common factors, and then we will multiply as normal. If we look at 4/15 times 5/16, we know that the greatest common factor of 4 and 16 is 4. So we know that 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. Now looking at 5 and 15, we know that the greatest common factor is 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. Now we multiply straight across the numerators. 1 times 1 is 1, and straight across the denominators. 3 times 4 is 12, for an answer of 1/12. So we know that 4/15 times 5/16 equals 1/12. Example number 4 will be a real-world example. You are helping your teacher cover a bulletin board in the classroom. How much paper will you need to cover the bulletin board? If we look, we see that the bulletin board is 5.5 feet by 10 feet, and we know that we need to find the area by multiplying the length times the width. Our first step will be to change 5.5 feet into an improper fraction. So 5.5 times 10 becomes 11 halves times 10 over 1. Next, we will need to cross-reduce. 11 and 1 don't have any common factors other than 1, but 10 and 2 have 2 in common. If we divide them each by 2, we find that 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now multiplying across the numerators, we have 11 times 5, which is 55, and we have 1 times 1, which is 1 in the denominator. So our answer is 55. You will need 55 square feet of paper to cover the bulletin board. Today you learned how to multiply fractions and mixed numbers. The Common Core State Standard today was 6 NSA1. Now that you are familiar with these techniques, complete the independent practice problems in your guided notes packet. Then watch the independent practice solutions video to check your work. Thanks for watching this episode of Conquering Math, where it all adds up. I'll see you next time.